Welcome to In-Laws and Crime. I'm Ashley.
I am Megan. This is In-Laws and Crime. I almost didn't do it.
Oh, you gotta
You
roll
got to
it.
do that.
Yeah, you do.
Y'all are welcome. And we're back.
We're back. Yeah.
Maybe a little sunburn. Did you get sunburned?
I did
yesterday?
not.
We had my daughter's birthday party out at the Jellystone in Tyler yesterday, and we were just sitting here reminiscing on how many children. It was jam-packed, and if anybody has been to Jellystone, the splash pad part, and there was a ton of people, you know, it's so chaotic.
It was packed. The line to get down the slides was just like, it felt like it was 20, 30 kids deep all day.
Yeah, and you're just trying to keep track of every kid, and it was just absolute mayhem, but we had fun.
I forgot to tell you this.
Oh, God.
The moment I get there, okay, I have to use the restroom. So we're on our way in. And while I'm going pee.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, everyone, if this is TMI. I start feeling something that's like stinging me.
Oh, crap.
And I was wearing a dress yesterday. So a wasp had landed on me. And as I like pulled my dress up to go to the bathroom, it was stuck in the folds of my dress and it was just stinging me in the stomach. And I got stung like 3 times.
Oh, my God, Ashley.
Yeah, it was awful. As I'm like mid pee, so I can't do anything about it. And so anyway, when I was finally able to stand up and shake it like out of my dress, it hit the floor. Thank God, upside down.
Yeah,
because it's a water park. The floor was completely soaking wet, so its wings got stuck.
Yeah,
and I was able to just smash that sucker, but not before he nailed me 3 times.
Good God. Dang, Jellystone be crazy.
Yeah.
It was fun though. Yeah, but like we said, it was freaking mayhem.
Yeah.
There were so many people. Her birthday's on July 5th. And so I always try and do her birthday parties the weekend after 4th of July, just because I know everywhere is going to be packed. But it was still packed this weekend.
Yeah.
There was so many people.
It was a lot.
It was fun.
It was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. Ashley got her a ferret ball pit because, like I probably told you on the last episode, we got her a ferret for her birthday that she's wanted for forever. And so Lovely and Ashley got her ferret a little ferret ball pit. And so that's what they're doing today, playing with all that.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I was so excited for her to open her gift because I told Megan, I texted her the night before. I was like, I got everything for Charlie that I would have bought for myself at 8 years old.
Guys, she got my daughter one of those old school trolls.
Yeah.
That has like the jewel in the belly button. And as soon as she was opening it and I saw that, I wanted to cry just because I loved the old school trolls with the little jewels in their belly buttons so much. And she freaking loved it so much. She was,
what was the name on the butt? They had names. These had names. Ours didn't originally, but
yeah, I don't think ours did it back in the day. But these had names, and you have to rub its booty. It has a heart on its butt cheek, and you have to rub its little butt cheek to like see what symbol it has, and then you look on the package, and it shows you what its name is. But they misspelled it. I don't know. Where did you get it from again? Do you remember?
5 and below.
5 and below. But they it's supposed to be nature, but it's neuter. And we noticed it yesterday. After she opened her presents, I was like looking at it again just because I loved it. And me and Ashley were cracking up because it says neuter. But when she actually opened it this morning, was like playing with the troll, I was like, look, rub its little booty and we can figure out what its name is. And then she was like, what's its name? I was like, nature.
You can get away with that maybe for a little bit longer.
Yeah, she didn't double check me on that. So, anyways, enough about.
Well, I have disappointing news.
Yeah,
we broke this down. I broke this down into 3 parts.
Yeah, this is now a 3-parter.
And a 3-parter. Was Betty Beats a 3-parter? Or was she just 2?
I think she was the 2-parter.
Just 2?
Yeah. I don't think we've ever done a 3-parter.
So sorry, friends. You're gonna have to wait to get the last of it.
We were throwing it back and forth if we were just gonna do one long episode to finish this off, but I got to really thinking about it, and I was, when I'm listening to podcasts, an hour max is how I like to have my podcast. So I feel like if it's longer than an hour, we try to want to break it down a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways.
Okay.
A 3-parter of this monster. This will be fun.
You ready?
Really. No.
I'm ready to get past this, guys.
Yes,
so.
Let's get through it. Oh, and I don't think we have any. Well, we have a crime file, but.
Oh, yeah. On the 4th of July, a guy was shot at a motel or a hotel in North Tyler, was shot and killed. And so a man was arrested for murder. His name was, what did I say? His name was Arthur.
Is this the victim or the shooter?
Arthur McCain, 37 years old, was charged with first-degree murder. He shot and killed Rodney Eugene Houston on the 4th of July. He was 63.
Terrible. 63, too.
Yeah. That's the one that I looked... Or, well, that's the one I remember hearing about.
Yeah.
So.
That sucks. Prayers for their family. That's horrible on a 4th of July.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a fun family holiday.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, no.
I have completely forgot about this. Also, 4th of July, right out in front of my house, they're redoing the road out here. So it was like 10:30 at night, and I think they were 10, 12-year-old boys were on ATVs. Yeah. And they were riding one behind another. And we have all this equipment out here for them to make the new road. And because it was 10:30, the ATVs didn't have lights on them. So the kids had a flashlight, and they ended up, one of the kids slammed right into a steamroller and he died on impact.
He died.
Awful on 4th of July.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, right out here.
Oh my gosh.
Awful. You know what? He must have been older than that, I think, because I think he is friends with my neighbor's son, and he's 14.
Yeah.
So they had to, if he wasn't that age, he at least knew who he was.
Yeah. That's horrible.
Anyway.
Well, prayers for their family, too. Jeez Louise. That's horrible.
All right, buddy.
Okay, Ashley, just rip the Band-Aid off and... bring us even lower than we are now.
Let's recap from last week.
Great.
So we're talking about the 3 unsolved murders of the girls in the Dallas Metroplex. Christy Meeks from Mesquite, Christy Proctor from Plano, and Roxanne Reyes from Garland. Gary Sweet, a Garland detective, has taken upon himself to try and solve these cases. At this point, he has a jail informant named Jeffrey Sunnycab out of an Ohio correctional facility claiming to have information that proves David Elliott Penton, his former cellmate, is the man responsible for the girls' murders. David Penton was in jail at the time for the murder of Nedra Ross in Ohio. Detective Gary Sweet is to the point in his investigation where he wants to track down eyewitnesses from the abductions. He's already tracked down Julia Diaz, who was nearly kidnapped herself at 6 years old, but 13 years later, she's still too traumatized to ID David as the man
the one that they
her.
tried to hypnotize.
Yes, that's the one they tried to hypnotize, and she just couldn't do it. And so we ended with Jeffrey Sunnycab telling Detective Gary Sweet that he needed to track down a girl named Tiffany Ibira, that Tiffany was kidnapped and released by David Penton.
Yeah.
That's where I left y'all.
Because is that the one where he was like, she was just too damn pretty to kill?
She was too damn cute to kill.
Disgusting.
Yeah, he is. It doesn't get any better for him. Okay. So at this point, Jeffrey has proven to be a pretty reliable source. And if Tiffany Ibira checks out, it just further proves Jeffrey's credibility. If Tiffany was kidnapped and let go, this will put David in the Dallas area at the time of the kidnappings. And if Tiffany could ID David as her kidnapper, she could break the case wide open.
Yeah.
Gary had not remembered seeing Tiffany's name appear in any of his research. Either way, he called the Dallas Police Department and asked if there was an offense report from 1986 on Tiffany Ibira. And Dallas PD confirmed, indeed, the report existed.
Wow.
So Gary asked the officer to please fax over the report immediately. As he read the report, a detail jumped out at him. Tiffany described the kidnapper's vehicle as a white van with brown stripes. Gary remembered seeing a picture of the van when David was arrested in Ohio for the murder of Nedra Ross. So it was in the paper. They had posted his white van with brown stripes.
Okay.
He also noted the description Tiffany gave that closely matched with the one that Julia Diaz gave 13 years ago. But there were some discrepancies. If Gary was going to connect Christy Meeks, Christy Proctor, and Roxanne Reyes to David Penton, he was going to have to do some digging. So here's his biggest discrepancy right now. In January 1985, when Christy Meeks was abducted, 2 little boys described the man driving a small gray or yellow sedan. February 1986, Tiffany told police the man drove a white van with brown stripes. Then nearly 2 years later, Julia described a gray 4-door sedan, and then we know David was driving the white van with the brown stripes when he took Nitra.
Yeah.
But Gary wasn't discouraged because he felt it was plausible that David possibly had 2 vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just a reminder that Gary's doing all of this while he still has a full active caseload at the police department.
Yeah.
So he said he would often get overwhelmed with all the details of the Texas girls and sometimes felt like giving up. But instead of giving up, as I mentioned in part 1, Gary had put together a scrapbook to keep him motivated and to remember why he was working so hard to solve these cases.
Such a good idea, too, to do that.
Yeah.
That's really smart of him.
Yep. So he would pull the pictures of Roxanne's family had provided and look at those along with newspaper clippings whenever he felt like he was ready to give up.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gary needed to find Tiffany Ibera. So he reached out to LexisNexis again, which is what he used to find Julia Diaz the first time.
Oh, okay.
And Tiffany Ibera's popped up, or several of them popped up actually, but only one that fit the right age of the Tiffany he was looking for. The report showed that she was living in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, but there was no contact number for her.
Dang.
So Gary then reached out to the local sheriff's office in Bay St. Louis, and turns out the deputy personally knew Tiffany Ibera.
That's handy.
Yeah, so he said he would reach out to Tiffany and have her contact Gary. In the meantime, Gary gets another call from Jeffrey. Jeffrey said that he thought Gary would be interested in knowing that David kept a photo album. And in this photo album was pictures of little girls, and on the back of each picture was the letter V, O, or A, or a combination of the letters.
What the hell do those mean?
Jeffrey continued on that the letters are a code to describe what kind of sex he had with his victim. So I'll let you put together what V, O, and A stand for.
That is absolutely
awful.
Disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And refresh my memory, is he still in jail? Are they both still together?
Yeah, they're not together, but they are in prison
incarcerated
together in jail. Yeah, he's not his cellmate anymore, but they are incarcerated together.
Okay, gotcha.
In Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary is, of course, completely sickened by this information, but he also knows he can't be... this could be huge to the investigation.
Yeah, that would be a very strong piece of evidence, I feel.
Right. So he keeps his composure not to let Jeffrey on to how he's feeling and asked what else was in the album. And Jeffrey said there were pictures of vehicles in the album, but he would not tell Gary what kind of vehicles were in there.
What in the world?
He's a toot. He's trying to be helpful, but he's still kind of a piece, you know?
Who...
Jeffrey.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So once the call was over, Gary called Warren Correctional Facility in Ohio and asked who he needed to talk to about getting a court order, a warrant to seize an item from an inmate at their facility. Gary was transferred over to investigator Shay Harris. And Harris said, I don't know what it's like in Texas, but Ohio inmates don't have any right to privacy. He had then asked Gary what he was looking for. And Gary said the name David Penton, and Shay quickly cut in and said, as a matter of fact, I pulled a photo album from his cell today. So
I bet he was just so excited.
Yeah. He said inmates in the protected section of the prison were highly watched to make sure they weren't smuggling in child pornography. Gary asked if there were pictures of little girls and were there letters on the back of each picture. And Shay confirmed yes to both.
Wow.
Gary then asked if there were pictures of cars. And Shay said, yep, there's a picture of a white van and a picture of a gray 4-door Nissan or Datsun. He couldn't really tell.
Why the hell does he have pictures of his own vehicle?
I'm gonna get there.
Wow.
Then on the back of one of the car pictures was written Monrovia and car packed for Texas.
Monrovia and car packed for Texas.
Yes. So Gary asked Shay to make color copies of everything in the album and mail them to the Garland PD.
Mm-hmm.
A few days went by and Gary's phone rang, and on the other end was Tiffany Abera. Gary asked if she had ever lived in Dallas area, to which she hesitantly said yes. She has no idea what this is about.
Yeah,
right?
She's like, what are we doing here?
Gary explained the reason for his call, and Tiffany confirmed she was the little girl that had been kidnapped and released in the Dallas area. They continued talking for a few minutes, and then Tiffany said, and I quote, "I'm alive by the grace of God." Gary agreed she indeed was lucky. Then Tiffany went on to say that he killed a girl from my school a few days later. And Gary nearly fell out of his chair.
Yeah. So, and refresh all of our memories, Tiffany Abera is the one at the beginning of last week's episode that she was on her way
to school.
Yeah. Yeah. And for some reason he let her go.
Yes.
And then the next day, and she was like trying to tell her mom, and her mom
didn't believe her.
She kind of was thinking this was a boy who cried wolf situation, but then the school ended up calling the authorities.
Yes.
And then a few days later, another little girl got taken.
Correct.
And killed.
So Gary's like, what?
Yeah. Wow.
And he said, what do you mean? She said, he kidnapped and killed a girl named Christy Proctor that went to my school. Well, now Gary's jaw is on the floor because he did not catch that the two girls went to the same school.
Wow.
He looked at both reports, and sure enough, there it was. They both went to the same school. And not only were they taken from the same area, they were both taken from Waterfall Lane.
So the same road.
They were taken from the same neighborhood street.
Wow.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yes.
Oh my God.
The conversation continued, and Tiffany asked, why are you doing all this? To which Gary said, I'm trying to figure out who killed these girls.
Yeah.
Then Tiffany said, I thought the case was solved. And Gary's super confused, and he asked her to explain. And Tiffany said, 2 years ago, two detectives, Martha Sanders from Dallas and Keith Grisham from Plano, came to see her, and she picked her kidnapper out of a photo lineup.
What?
She said she never heard anything else and assumed the case had been solved. So she ID'd her kidnapper 2 years prior. Gary let her know that it was still an open investigation and asked her to give, if he gave her another photo lineup, could she ID the kidnapper again? And without hesitation, she replied, absolutely, I can.
Yeah.
I can remember him like it was yesterday.
I'm sure she could.
Gary continued to think about the fact that 2 years ago, Tiffany had ID'd her kidnapper and then nothing came of it.
Yeah, what the hell?
That's when he remembered 2 years ago, he received a call from Tammy Lopez, Roxanne's mom, stating she had heard there was new information in the case.
And she's like,
this must have been what Tammy was talking about that day.
Oh my gosh.
Gary then called Detective Keith Grisham to ask him about the interview with Tiffany 2 years ago. Keith stated he and Martha Sanders did go visit Tiffany, and she did ID David Penton as her kidnapper.
Why wasn't this told?
Keith took the evidence to the DA's office for review, and they decided there wasn't enough to charge him on because while he did kidnap Tiffany, he didn't harm her and he let her go, so the case was dropped. This guy just keeps escaping
slipping
and
through the cracks.
Yes, it's awful.
And I feel like every time we hear or talk about a child predator case, that is what happens.
Yeah.
And I cannot figure it out.
I don't know.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I think I'm most frustrated about they keep being released.
Yeah, like and like those. Once again, though, I just feel like when it comes to child predators, even the most minor offenses, yeah, he kidnapped her and put her in his car and let her go.
His intentions were poor.
His intentions were to kidnap her. He took that child, not his child, without parents' permission. He needs to be in jail. I mean, I just don't. Do we need to build a new facility for all these people? I don't care. I will gladly pay my tax money to that. So, oh, so crazy.
Yep. So, okay, at this point, Gary is really starting to get overwhelmed. He finally decided it's time to see if he can get some help because he's doing all of this on his own, right?
On top of his already
full caseload.
Yeah.
Right. So Gary drove over to Mesquite Police Department to talk to Mike Bradshaw about what he had learned from Jeffrey Sonnycab, Julia Diaz, and Tiffany Ibera. Mike said that he'd been transferred over to the Internal Affairs Unit, and a new detective was Bruce Bradshaw, no relation to Mike. And Mike told Gary that he was glad that he was looking into the case because Christy Meek's abduction and murder haunted him and affected him and the other detective, Bob Hallman.
I bet so.
So Gary sat down with Bruce Bradshaw and went over the case, and Bruce was 100% on board. So November 8th, 2000, Gary and Bruce traveled to Warren Correctional Facility in Ohio to meet face-to-face with Jeffrey.
Wow.
Jeffrey instructed the officers. Jeffrey instructed the officers to dress casually so as not to cause any suspicion among other inmates.
Smart.
Jeffrey refused to meet the two detectives in a private interrogation room because that was an immediate sign that something was up. So Gary and Bruce agreed to all of his demands and scheduled their friendly visit with Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Gary booked a flight to Ohio the day before the interview and brought along with him Detective Matt Myers, who was a Cleveland, Ohio native and had experience working with pedophiles in other cases.
Oh, wow.
So the next day, Bruce Bradshaw and Detective Don Phillips, a young Mesquite detective, flew up, and they all met at the prison. It was agreed that Gary and Bruce would meet with Jeffrey while Don and Matt collected records from prison investigators.
Okay.
One small problem, though. Jeffrey had no idea what the detectives looked like. So how could they pretend to know each other? How could they find each other in this room? So Shay Harris, the one that had the book, right, that found the photo album, with Warren Correctional Facility, told the two detectives exactly where to sit in the visiting center, and he would tell Jeffrey where to go.
Okay.
So now the detectives have mugshots of Jeffrey, so they know roughly what he looks like. Yeah, what they're looking for. So Jeffrey had warned Gary that he intended to hug them when they met, 1, to keep up with appearances, and 2, to feel for any wires.
Yeah.
Because remember, he was adamant he was not to be recorded.
Yeah, he's pretty sneaky.
He'd be very sneaky.
He'd be very sneaky.
Yeah. So when the day came, though, Jeffrey approached the two men and he reached out his hand for a handshake instead. So he didn't hug them like he said he was going to. And all three sat down because Gary was like, hug away. Like, I've got nothing to hide. I've followed all the rules.
Yeah.
This interaction was extremely important to Jeffrey's credibility because the detectives were trained to watch body language and eye movements during interrogations.
Yeah.
Meeting in person also eliminated Jeffrey's excuse that other inmates were too close.
Yeah.
The meeting between the three went on for 3 hours.
Holy heck.
Yeah. And
because up until this point, he's only been doing like 10-minute phone calls.
Yes.
Because that's all he's allowed.
But he's doing them daily. But 10-minute phone calls.
Yeah.
And I think I read at one point that they were given permission to have a 15-minute phone call. So they were extended to 15 minutes. But yes, either way, short.
Yeah.
Short.
Wow.
Yeah. And Jeffrey, by all accounts, was comfortable openly talking about the cases despite the room being full of other inmates. Gary noticed that the tables in the visitation room were far enough apart to keep conversations pretty quiet and that other inmates were too invested in their own visitors to give much thought about what was going on at their table.
Yeah.
The interview went incredibly well and both detectives were certain Jeffrey was telling the truth. Jeffrey also mentioned that 2 other inmates agreed to come forward with information they had on the 3 missing girls.
Oh, damn.
Just before they parted ways, they asked Jeffrey if he was willing to submit to a polygraph test, and Jeffrey agreed.
Wow. I did not see that coming.
So, well.
Okay.
Well.
I was about to say, that's not on par. Wow.
So the 2 detectives then headed to a private investigation room where they would meet the 2 other informants Jeffrey had told them about. The first one they met was David Quirky.
Quirky?
Quirky.
Wow.
David Corky was first sentenced in 1986 in Sarasota, Florida, after assaulting a child. He served a short time in prison, then was arrested again in 1989 for assaulting 5 more children, both boys and girls that ranged in the age from 7 to 12. And when did he do this? While he was babysitting and on camping trips working as a church youth counselor.
Guys,
run your background checks, my friends, please.
I'm telling you, and just like yesterday, I was keeping my eyeballs wide open.
Yes, Meg and I were talking about it. Like, there's a creeper.
There's a creeper somewhere in these parts wanting to snatch a kid.
Yeah,
so,
at the park. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, get this. He was sentenced to 6 one-year terms.
What the hell?
But was out by 1994.
6 one-year terms.
Yeah, so 6 years and then got out early.
And this was back when?
He started in 86. He was arrested in 86, 89, and then released in 94. And then he immediately assaulted 2 10-year-old boys, then fled to Texas, where he kidnapped a little girl, but was caught by police after a long, high-speed chase. Quit letting these people out.
Wow.
Quit letting these people out. David Quirky sat down with the detectives and explains he met David Penton about 2 years prior. They both bonded over the fact that they served in the Army, and it wasn't long after they made a connection that David Penton started to boast about his abductions and murders.
So weird.
Quirky recounted what had been told to him and went on to say, and I quote, "He likes to brag about how he's beaten the system and never been caught." And Gary asked, "Well, how do you explain Nidra Ross's case?" And Quirky replied, in Penton's warped mind, because he never admitted it to police. So in his mind, he hasn't been caught because he didn't admit to it.
That's an odd way to look at it.
Well, once the interview was over, the 2 detectives were pleased. If Quirky's story was exactly the same as Jeffrey's, then the detectives would have known that the story had been rehearsed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The basic information was the same, but how it was relayed was very different, and enough like they felt good about it.
Yeah.
In fact, they were more convinced about what Quirky didn't know. He knew absolutely nothing about the Christy Meeks case and was asked multiple times, and he stuck to his initial statement he had no idea who she was.
Yeah.
Further supporting that the men did not corroborate their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Before ending the interview, detectives asked Quirky if he would submit to a polygraph, and he agreed. After 6 hours of interrogating 2 inmates, Gary and Bruce were ready to call it a day.
Yeah, I bet.
They met up with Don and Matt to talk about what they had found while they were investigating the records. So the next day, the men returned to the prison to meet with the 3rd and final informant, William Westmus.
What are these names? What are these names?
Megan, William, a former televangelist,
Of course.
was serving a 104 to 269 year sentence for sexually assaulting 17 minors, the youngest being only 2 years old. At least he's not getting out.
I was about to say, I mean, at least he's doing the time that he should be, which is freaking forever.
His whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember I said in the first episode that it's really hard in Ohio to get somebody on the death row.
Yeah.
So here, not so much, but there, yes.
God, that is, and these investigators going and interrogating these absolute monsters has to be so
they're insane. Sick. They're physically sick.
Yeah.
And I was going to tell you about Bob Hallman, and maybe I'll do a spinoff of him later about how this case affected him. It ruined his life. Yeah. It absolutely ruined his life. He lost everything.
I mean, you have to be, I don't even know what type of human that is to have to be a investigator into child crimes against children, like,
Yeah.
and see all of that and be exposed to that day to day for your job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You got to have a good therapist.
So William stated that he met David Penton 3 years ago and that David immediately started boasting about his crimes. William gave details about all 3 cases, and again, the detectives felt the information was truthful because William's accounts varied enough between Jeffrey and Corky that they felt it was not rehearsed. And William also agreed to a polygraph.
Wow.
Okay, but here's the detective's biggest concern. One, polygraphs were not admissible in court.
Yeah.
They couldn't use them. And second, how much credit would these pedophiles receive in the courtroom?
Yeah.
Was the jury really going to believe 3 convicted pedophiles?
Yeah. Yeah.
Before the detectives loaded back up to Texas, they had one more task to complete while in Ohio. Jeffrey told the investigators that Penton once told him the best place to hide evidence was in the insulation in the attic. He said that no one would go through all that insulation looking for evidence. So the detectives loaded up and headed to David's childhood home.
They're like, well, boys, let's go through some insulation.
Yes. They found that David's mom had sold the home a couple of years ago to another couple. When they arrive at the home, the new owner opens the door where she's presented with their search warrant, and detectives
Probably
explain.
about shocked as hell.
Well, she knew she was living in his former home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and explain why they're there. She let them in, and the three of the 4 detectives headed up to the attic while Bruce Bradshaw stayed downstairs and spoke to the wife. The husband and wife were familiar with the fact that they were living in Penton's childhood home. It took several hours, but the detectives found a small pile of rags that had been neatly bundled and tied together. The rags appeared to have blood stains, but they wouldn't know for sure until they could send the rags for testing.
What in the world?
As the detectives are making their way back downstairs, they were all greeted by the homeowner, Bradshaw, a neighbor, and the neighbor's very beautiful young daughter.
Oh, no.
The woman and her daughter explained they lived in the neighborhood when David lived there. The mother continued that David always made them feel uneasy, and she had always advised her daughter to never be alone with him at any time. At that point, the daughter chimed in and said she didn't have to tell me that. He was a creep.
Yeah, she could tell.
As the 2 women are recounting their interactions with the Pentons over the years, Gary Sweet remembers something. One of the things Jeffrey relayed to Gary was that David was obsessed with a young Catholic girl that lived down the street from him. So he had been stalking her.
Yeah.
But she was too close to home for him to ever attack.
Yeah.
Right? Because he went above and beyond to go other places.
That's disgusting.
So the only thing that saved her was her location.
Yeah.
Of being in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Golly.
Can you imagine? And the woman was right, like, to be leery of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mom's intuition.
Yeah, you're dang right. Wow.
Once the detectives were back in Texas, they all went back to work with their current caseloads and hit the ground running. But in the back of Gary's mind was Roxanne's mom, Tammy. Gary wanted to reach out to her to let her know that after 3.5 years since she called in thinking there was an update in her daughter's case, he now actually had information to share.
Yeah.
He also wanted to collect her DNA to compare with whatever they may be able to lift off the rags recovered from David's attic. Unfortunately, Tammy would have to wait because Gary was handed a big case upon his return.
Oh, no.
He was having to investigate one of his very own.
Oh, dang.
Another Garland officer had shot and killed a teenage boy, and the media and general public were losing their minds over the death of this teenager.
Oh, no.
It was a media nightmare, and it wasn't until dash cam footage from another assisting officer was released that the media would move on. The dash cam showed the whole scene, proving that the officer shot in self-defense. The teen was coming at the officer with 2 butcher knives raised over his head, ready to stab the officer as soon as he got close enough. There was also a recording of the officer repeatedly asking the teenager to put the knives down before a single shot was fired, killing the teenager.
Heartbreaking.
And this teen was known by officers. He had, because they had just responded to a 911 call the week before. So this guy unfortunately had a history of violent outburst. But now that the video footage was out, the media moved on to other things, and the teen's family is not interviewed again.
Yeah. Dang.
So now that this case against the Garland officer was settling down, Gary could now find some time to get in touch with Tammy.
Yeah.
Through a social security number search, he found that she was living in Kaufman and working at a nursing home.
Kaufman, all right.
Gary visited the nursing home, but unfortunately, Tammy wasn't working that day, and he was given her home address. When Gary arrived, there was a young girl about 6 or 7 years old playing in the front yard. She looked as exactly how he would have imagined Roxanne to look at that age. And then he realized he's looking at her younger sister.
Oh, wow.
Even though Tammy was expecting Gary when he arrived, he introduced himself and explained why he was there, and Tammy immediately broke down in tears.
Oh.
As she calmed down, she invited Gary in, and they spoke further about what Gary had discovered and where he was in the investigation. Then Tammy dropped a bomb on Gary.
Oh, God.
Tammy said, Roxanne is still alive.
What?
This was a statement that Gary was not expecting to hear. He asked, why do you think that, Tammy? And Tammy said, her father, Sergio, had taken her to Mexico and was hiding her there.
What?
Yes. And with a very heavy heart, Gary looked at Tammy and said, Tammy, she's gone. Yeah. So Tammy refused to accept this. And Gary understood.
Yeah.
He said it's not any different than parents setting a place and making a plate for their missing child every day at the dinner table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Gary then offered Tammy to come to the station, and he would show her the video steps that the lab took to identify Roxanne's remains. Tammy took Gary up on his offer, but she wanted her parents to be there when she viewed the footage. So a meeting was finally set up in July, and Tammy, her mom Joyce, and her stepdad Paul all arrived at the Garland police station and were greeted by Gary and a grief counselor. While in the meeting, Paul recounts the connection he made to David Penton so many years ago. Because remember, he was the one that sent in the article.
Yeah.
He said he was on his way home, stopped at a gas station, and staring at him while at the register was a man on the front page of the newspaper. Paul recognized that man staring back at him was nearly identical to the composite sketch that Julia Diaz had given to police, except that the picture he was looking at was David's mugshot.
Wow.
That's when Paul gave the newspaper to the Ohio investigators as a possible connection to his granddaughter's case in Texas. From there, Ohio PD sent the article to the Garland PD, which is how Gary found it in Roxanne's box.
Yeah.
Once the family was settled in, Gary started to play the video. Some of the video was examining the bones and the skull and the hair that still had a barrette attached.
Oh.
At this point, Joyce and Tammy are in tears. The final proof was the process of superimposing photographs over the skull and lining up certain features. So remember, we had this in Chad Choice's case in one of our first episodes, that they'd superimposed and layered photos onto ID.
Yeah, I remember that.
So Tammy said she now believed Gary that her daughter was gone.
What a horrible realization.
Yep. Gary, because she was holding on to hope, and now it's gone.
I mean, I'd do the same thing.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
Gary apologized that she had not been shown the video many years ago, and that she had every right to view the evidence that was proving the body they found belonged to Roxanne.
Yeah.
As Tammy and Joyce composed themselves, Tammy asked Gary to see the composite sketch again. She remembered being at the station the day Julia worked with the artist on the composite sketch, and she wanted to see it. So Gary pulled the sketch from his inspiration book and gave it to Tammy. She slowly ran her fingers over it and made a comment about the mole over his right eye. Gary was like, what? And he's like, wait a second. And so he's now looking at the image, and he sees the mole above the eye. The only image that Gary had of David was his Ohio mugshot from 1989, and Penton's bangs were long enough and swooped to the side. It was covering part of his right eye.
Oh, no.
Gary excused himself for a moment and went to his computer to pull up more recent mugshots of David, and sure enough, plain as day, there was a large mole above his right eye.
Oh, my gosh.
After the meeting was over, Gary called up Bruce Bradshaw and asked about the mole above David's right eye. Bruce immediately recalled the composite sketch Tiffany Easter and Michael Meeks had given the sketch artist many years ago. He pulled the sketch. However, Tiffany described the mole as being on the right cheek.
Oh.
But a traumatized 9-year-old, it wouldn't be a far stretch to think that maybe she just didn't remember the exact location of the mole. But it was on the right side of the face and in the close proximity to where David's real mole was.
Yeah.
So Bruce then pulled up the most recent mugshot of David from Ohio, and there it was, David and the mole.
David and his mole.
If not for Tammy, this facial detail may have been overlooked.
That's insane. That is insane.
Isn't that wild?
God sure knew what he was doing when he smacked a mole around on his face.
So honestly, through this, all these detectives are very strong men of faith, and Gary says this repeatedly, that God led him. It was just fate that these pieces just continually fell together in his lap, basically, unfolding this case for him.
Crazy.
Okay. So remember, all 3 of our informants in Ohio agreed to polygraphs.
Oh, boy.
So Gary arranged for a retired detective who is now in the business of conducting polygraphs to fly to Ohio to perform the test. Oh, gosh. Once he arrived, he called Gary and said, well, they're all refusing to take the polygraph now.
Imagine that.
The next day, Gary received a call from Jeffrey's lawyer who said Jeffrey had a list of demands in order to cooperate any further. Gary was pissed.
I bet. But I mean, what do you expect?
Gary refused to give in to the inmates' demands and was determined to solve this case without them.
Good for Gary.
Gary gathered up all he had and the other detectives, and they put together and they took all what they had to the DA. She looked it over and she's like, this is a great start. But she's like, there's too many loose ends for you guys to tie up. So before she felt comfortable presenting the case to the grand jury, she wanted these guys to do some more digging.
Yeah.
So the guys hit the ground running so that they could nail David Penton. Jeffrey Sunnycab kept pushing for his demands to be met and that the 3 men wanted to be extradited to Texas to stand trial. But Gary wasn't budging.
Good for
He's
Gary.
like, I'm not doing it. Over the years, Jeffrey had asked Gary to write letters to the judge to say how much Jeffrey had been so helpful and would ultimately ask for a reduced sentence. Okay. Gary had no intention of helping Jeffrey get out early.
Yeah.
So he would write the letters and then he would send them to Jeffrey because he wanted to review them, make sure the letters said what he wanted them to say. And then Jeffrey would mail them to whoever, he was trying to address.
Yeah.
So what he didn't know was that Gary was calling everyone behind him.
That's hilarious.
Letting him know that what the letters were all about and what was going on between him and Jeffrey. And most of the time, Gary was met with laughter and was assured no one had any intention of reducing Jeffrey's sentence.
Yeah, good. That's hilarious.
So at the same time, Shay Harris with Ohio PD was not happy with the 3 informants' list of demands. So he put them all in solitary confinement until they had a change of heart. In the meantime, Gary asked Shay, was there anyone else that might be able to help with their case? Shay was like, actually, you know what? I think I do know someone that can help. So Shay called for a guy named Tony Baker to be brought to his office. Tony was in for burglary and had been moved into the protected section of the prison because he got into a confrontation with a gang in general population. When Shay explained to Tony the reason he wanted to talk to him, Tony did not hesitate to help at all. He absolutely hated David. In fact, Tony said David talked so much about his assaults and murders of his victims that Tony snapped one day, grabbed David, shoved him up against the wall, and told him he didn't want to hear another word out of his mouth.
Wow. Well, yeah. So he's in there. Thank you, Tony. So Tony's in there just for a robbery.
Yeah.
He has nothing to do with kids.
Correct.
So, yeah, I'm sure like your typical robbery or, theft or whatever, criminal would not find that very appeasing to listen to all that bullshit.
Yeah. So Tony told Gary while he tried hard not to listen to David, he gave the information he had. And while it was not as detailed as the other 3 inmates, it was, gold for Gary to the investigation. Tony even gave information about other possible victims in Arkansas and Louisiana.
What in the heck?
Gary was thrilled. A simple burglar who had asked for nothing in return for his testimony would hold up so much better at trial than 3 pedophiles with a list of demands.
Yeah, no crap. Dang.
The next day, Shay called with more good news.
Oh my God.
He remembered prior to Jeffrey and David being cellmates, David was also cellmates with a former cop. So
what?
Gary and Bruce wasted no time, and they took off to Ohio to meet with a former officer named Timothy Creighton. Timothy was a Vietnam vet and worked for Ohio PD in Bethel, Ohio. One of Tiffany's friends asked him to tag along while he went to a known drug dealer's home to get the money the dealer owed him. At some point, things went south. Timothy's friend ended up shot, and the drug dealer was killed, and Timothy ended up with all the money.
Whoops.
Since Timothy had been a police officer, he was placed in protected section of the prison for his safety.
Mm-hmm.
So, and while he was there, he also helped officers break up known drug rings in the prison. So,
oh wow, okay.
While he made a mistake, he was helpful while in prison.
Yeah.
So Gary and Bruce are all set to talk to Timothy. So when Timothy walks into the interrogation room and the detectives explained while they were there, Timothy said, and I quote, "What took you so long?"
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Like, a former cop knows all this information on this sicko.
Yeah. He said, "I've been wondering when someone would get around to asking me about Penton."
Wow.
Timothy said that David talked almost exclusively about his crimes. And if the conversation wasn't even about crime or anything, if they were talking about something completely unrelated, David would circle the conversation back to himself and talk about his crimes.
Just screams douchebag.
I know. This guy, he has
I cannot stand. Well,
he has no redeeming qualities.
He's already a child predator.
Yeah,
smack on top of a freaking.
He's a wife abuser. He's awful. He's absolutely.
And he
awful.
loves to talk about himself. I already can't. You can be the nicest person in the world, but if you love to talk about yourself, and that's the biggest. That's the biggest turn off.
Okay. So Timothy said David first approached him about the rumor circulating around that he was a cop. He said David clearly believed in a convict code among inmates, which you and I both know
there's no loyalty. There is no code of conduct. None. Yeah.
So David was curious about how long DNA, such as semen or blood, would remain on a victim's body. Timothy said there are lots of factors to consider. The biggest one was how the body was disposed of. From there, Tiffany. I love that. There's Timothy.
Tiffany should have told him.
He should have.
The DNA stays on the body forever, no matter what happens.
A cop named Tiffany. Timothy's cop background kicked in. As the two talked over the years, Timothy was secretly keeping a diary of their conversations.
Man, what the heck?
He figured that someday the information David was just spilling out might be helpful one day.
That's insane.
Unfortunately, Timothy couldn't find the secret notes while the detectives were there, but he promised he would keep looking and get his notes sent over to them.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, he did end up finding his notes and sent them to detectives.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah. So, and this is crazy to think about, because if Jeffrey, Sonny Cab, and his little buddies had not turned around and stopped cooperating, Gary wouldn't have
he wouldn't have found these other things.
Yes, so this is the part of that fate that he was talking about.
Absolutely.
So now he's got two more credible witnesses that have nothing to do,
cop,
right,
and just a robber.
Yeah, right.
Instead of three.
Granted, he did kill a drug dealer. Well, supposedly, but anyway. But
that's
a drug
fine.
dealer, okay,
that's fine.
Or one less drug dealer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
wow.
So that's just one of those things. He's like, had this not happened, I wouldn't have had this. And then my case just got even better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so crazy.
So Gary's now combing through Timothy's notes and finds an interesting mention of a mall in Mesquite. Timothy noted that David would often go to the Driftwood shopping center in Mesquite to look for his next victim.
Ew.
Gary found...
Is Driftwood the old mall that's always been there? It's a shopping center.
They call it a shopping center, yeah. That's what they say. Well, they interchanged shopping center and mall when I was reading it.
Because we used to go to the Mesquite Mall all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time.
Yeah. So Gary found this little mention of the mall very interesting because it was not just a mall that a man from Ohio would have known anything about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really.
Yeah. The next thing in the notes was that David would visit a woman on Tree Line Street in Garland. Gary looked at a map and found Tree Line was a street that did exist and headed out the door to take a look around. Unfortunately, when he got to Tree Line, it was a new neighborhood. And in fact, it was new enough that construction of the home started after David was already in prison.
Yeah. Dang.
Gary headed back to the station and called Shay Harris and asked if he could talk to Timothy about the street name. Timothy admitted his notes were all written from memory after conversations with David, and it was possible he had not heard the name right.
Yeah, it's not like he was sitting there while he was talking.
Right.
Hold on. Repeat that name.
Exactly. But he was adamant that the name of the street would be similar to Tree Line. So Gary went back to his map. He saw Roxanne was abducted on Walnut Street. Then 1 block over from Walnut Street was a street called Timberline. If Timothy meant Timberline instead of Tree Line, it would put David in Roxanne's neighborhood.
Whoa.
And that's not a far stretch, especially coming from memory, right?
Yeah, really.
Okay, so it's been roughly about 3 months since Jeffrey, David Quirky, and William refused to cooperate and were sent to solitary confinement. Well, guess who had a little change of heart?
Solitary confinement can do something.
It'll do that to you. David Quirky was the first to call and apologize to Gary. He said he would help and asked for nothing in return.
Of course, his last name's Quirky.
Yes. He also said there was another informant he was trying to convince to talk to Gary, but the informant was a little reluctant. But he was going to keep working on him. Jeffrey Sunnycab was the last one to call and apologize, also stating he would assist in the investigation without anything in return.
That's hilarious.
Gary, recognizing the inmates' knowledge of David Penton and their initial willingness to help, Gary could only bite his tongue and accept their help again.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised he didn't say, no, thank you.
Right. Okay, so it's August 6, 2002. Gary, Bruce, and Don Phillips, the young detective from the initial interview or trip to Ohio, head to Bay St. Louis, Mississippi to meet up with Tiffany Abira so she could ID David Penton from the day she was kidnapped in 1986. When they arrived at the home, they were greeted by Tiffany's mom, Teresa, who informed them that they had just missed Tiffany. She had packed up and moved to Arkansas.
Oh, no.
Well, so the detectives were like, well, we're here. So we're going to sit down with Tiffany or with Teresa. And so they asked her to recount the day.
Yeah.
So as they sat with her, Tiffany's dad, Carlos, came in from work. So the detectives asked him, had he hired anyone to kidnap his daughter to show her a lesson?
Yeah, because that was one of the things.
That's one of the things that Jeffrey said. Carlos angrily responded, hell no, I would never do that to my daughter. So then I say, remember, Jeffrey told the detectives that. Yeah. So, and he was like, I get it. He's like, but it was a detail we had so I got to do my due diligence, so I understand. So the 3 detectives left the Abiras, booked a hotel room for the night, and planned to head to Batesville, Arkansas the next day. So the next morning came and they made the long journey to Batesville. And when they pulled up, Tiffany was actually waiting for them in the driveway.
Wow.
Her mom had called to give her a heads up that the detectives were headed her way. They sat in the living room with Tiffany, her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's family. As they sat, Tiffany told her story exactly as she had 14 years prior. She also admitted to suffering from survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
That just days after her kidnapping, her friend and classmate would be kidnapped and killed. After she tells them her story, Gary places the photo lineup on the living room table for Tiffany to ID her kidnapper. Gary had even updated David's photo from the one that she had seen 2 years ago when she'd ID'd him the first time. Before Gary could turn the paper around for her to view the men in the lineup, she immediately ID'd David Penton.
Wow.
And Gary said, wait a second, let me turn this around so you can see the pictures upright.
Yeah.
And she responded, not necessary. That's him. I will never forget his face. I still see him as clearly in my dreams as I did the day he grabbed me.
Oh, that's got to be horrible.
Gary struggled to hide his emotion.
Yeah.
Tiffany was a credible eyewitness for his case, and he really needed. And when she ID'd David upside down in a split second, he knew how important she was going to be to his case.
Yeah.
So the detectives wrap up with Tiffany, and they crawl back in their car and head the 6-hour drive back to Dallas.
They are gaining them miles.
Yes. So once they're back, they put together a PowerPoint of what they had and found and casually presented the information to the Dallas County Assistant District Attorney, Greg Davis. They wanted in front of Greg because he was most likely going to be the lead prosecutor assigned to the case. Greg was known to get the high-profile death penalty cases, and he won way more often than not.
Yeah.
After Greg heard the information, he asked the detectives to return to Ohio to get written statements from the informants. The detectives had also been given a couple more names of inmates to talk to. A guy named Marlon Mitchell, who claimed that he knew nothing about Penton's crimes, even though they were cellmates. The detectives just figured Marlon Mitchell didn't want to be involved.
Yeah.
They interviewed an inmate named James Doan, who said that David Penton did love to talk about his crimes, but he couldn't recall much detail. But he did tell detectives to reach out to Howard Guer.
What are up with these names, man?
Howard was a former Ohio officer.
Oh.
Gary remembered this name because it was the name David Quirky had mentioned, but the inmate was the one that was hesitant to speak up. While they waited to see if Howard was willing to speak with them, they were able to locate a guy named Albert Mulligan, who had been in jail with Penton when he was arrested for Nidra Ross's murder. Mulligan was currently out of prison and was willing to meet the detectives. So, okay, before they meet up with Mulligan, Detective Sheesby, the retired detective from Nidra's case, gave the guys a drawing that Mulligan had drawn while in prison. Mulligan's daughter had died young, so the drawing was of a young girl ascending into heaven.
Oh, my.
But Penton had taken the drawing, put boobs on the angel child.
No.
Then drew a merry-go-round and a swing set and finished the picture off by drawing a lake. Mulligan asked what the lake was for, and Penton replied that it was just a lake in Texas.
What in the world?
Mulligan recalled that when Penton would talk about his crimes, his eyes would glass over as if when he told his stories in great detail. He continued saying Penton loved reliving the pain, horror, and suffering he inflicted on his victims. Mulligan summed up the conversation by saying Penton is good for about 4 or 5 girls in Texas. We're only talking about 3.
Yeah.
Okay. After the meeting with Mulligan was over, the detectives went back to David's childhood home and tore up the attic again.
Yeah.
They ended up finding costume jewelry, the kind that little girls would wear, and the detectives wondered if David kept other mementos of his victims.
That is just heart-wrenching.
Then Bruce remembered that Christy Meeks was said to have been wearing a little necklace with the red jewel. Unfortunately, I don't know if this little necklace with the red jewel was in what they found that day. It didn't say.
That is so freaking sad.
Following the search of the home, the detectives returned to Warrant Correctional Facility to re-interview informants and talk to a new one. Okay, so remember when we were in Ohio to record Jeffrey Sunnycab, David Quirky, and William Westmus. While talking to the informants, they all cooperate that David Penton was likely to have victims in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Indiana.
What? Indiana?
Yep.
Good Lord.
Yes. Gary Sweet then remembered in October of 1986, there was a case in Thornton, Indiana, about a 6-year-old girl that went missing from her front yard named Shannon Sherrill. However, in July of 2002, the story exploded again when a woman came forward claiming to be Shannon Sherrill.
What in the world?
At the time, this woman went by the name Donna Walker. The family rejoiced at their daughter's return.
Wow.
And then the DNA results came back and the whole thing was a hoax. Donna Walker was a mentally ill person that used what she knew from the news coverage to claim herself to be the missing Shannon Sherrill.
I am infuriated.
Yep. People are the worst. Apparently, Jeffrey's Sonny Cab had actually reached out to the Indiana Police Department in an attempt to tell them to look into David Penton and the disappearance of Shannon, but his calls and letters were never returned. Okay. All right, so we have a new guy to talk to named Donald Harvey, also known as the Angel of Death.
Oh.
This guy's pretty bad, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
all angels of death usually
William
are.
Davis was terrible, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so Donald Harvey claimed to have up to 87 victims.
Damn.
But 37 have been linked to him. Only 37.
Okay.
He killed between 1970 and 1987. He was accused of killing his homosexual lovers, his friends, neighbors, and patients. He often used poison to kill his victims, but eventually moved to smothering them with pillows. And one time, this is awful, he shoved a coat hanger up a patient's catheter.
A male patient? Mm-hmm. That is really intense.
Mm-hmm. David worked in the cardiac unit and was a self-proclaimed angel of death. As police were closing in on him, he suddenly confessed to all the murders because he knew that the police were about to discover his diary that detailed every murder.
What an idiot. What an idiot. And why is it always the cardiac unit? Cardiac.
I don't know.
Because that was David.
William Davis was also in the cardiac unit.
Yeah.
So while Donald was a monster in his own way, he was also very disgusted by David Penton, to the point that they didn't last long as cellmates, because Donald was like, you better get one of the two of us out of here. So he actually wasn't a good witness, because he was like, nope, spent no time with the guy.
Yeah.
Like, I may be a devil, but that guy, really the devil.
Yeah.
Okay, so next to be interviewed was Howard Greer. So he was our former officer.
Okay, yeah.
So this was the inmate David Quirky had been working on to come forward.
Yeah.
So he was sent to prison for 25, Howard was a former officer who went to prison at 25 years old when he was convicted of having sex with a 16-year-old girl.
Ooh.
Hold on now. The girl had told him she was of age, but the judge threw the book at him, and as a result, Howard was very, very bitter.
Dang.
I don't put it past a girl to lie about that.
Yeah, no.
Either way, Howard wanted to help if he could. He told detectives about the time he was cellmates with David Penton, and it was a verbatim to what everyone else was saying that had roomed with him. So he also added that Penton used a lot of drugs while in prison, mostly weed, but he smuggled in pseudoephedrine that is used to make meth.
Wow.
Howard went on to say that he believed Penton was a liar because the details would change from story to story.
Yeah.
So for instance, he stated that he took a girl named Christy that he assaulted and killed, put her body under a mattress, and then set it on fire. Then the next time he was reliving his story, he assaulted and killed a girl named Christy, then threw her body in a lake. So what Howard didn't know was that Penton was talking about two different Christies.
I was just about to ask.
He further went on to say that David Penton was actually pulled over by police when he had Christy Meek's body in the trunk of his car.
God bless it. Wow.
Then Howard told detectives that Penton planned to get out of prison, return to his quote-unquote activities, but this time he wouldn't punch the girls in the stomach to knock the air out of them. He was going to use the stun gun to knock them out and put them in his car, which we heard in episode 1. He told someone else that. But detectives found Howard a very credible witness, not only because he was a former officer, but also he didn't know Jeffrey Sunnycab at all.
Yeah.
So there was no way the two could have cooperated the story.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up in the interview room was Timothy Creighton. He retold his story to detectives as he had before, but he also told detectives that Penton is aware that he's being investigated. Timothy went on to say that Penton was scared, which was ironic considering all the bragging he did when talking about his horrific crimes and how much smarter he was than the cops and getting away with murder for years.
That never ceases to amaze me.
Now, all of a sudden, Penton was like, oh, yeah, I actually didn't do any of those things. I was just bullshitting. I would never hurt a child.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure, buddy.
After all this, detectives headed home and Gary Sweet jumped back into his eyewitness accounts that he could get. He remembered there was an eyewitness, Wanda Higgins, that Roxanne's kidnapper ran into when he was chasing Julia Diaz. And he remembered no one followed up with her after her initial conversation of the kidnapping.
Yeah. That's the one that it was at like the apartment building or whatever.
Correct. Yeah. So Gary was able to track her down and learned along the way that Miss Wanda was a drunk and no one found her to be a credible witness.
Oh, no.
Either way, Gary followed his gut and decided to reach out to her anyway.
Yeah.
He finally found her living in Terrell, Texas. Gary called her up and asked Miss Wanda if she remembered anything about the day that Roxanne was abducted. And Miss Wanda told Gary all that she could remember, which matched exactly what she had told detectives so many years ago. And Gary asked again, he asked, no one followed up with you? She's like, nope. He's like, okay, awesome. He's like,
great.
Yes. He's like, do you think that you could ID the man that ran into you that day? And she said, maybe. And Gary's like, you know what? I'm coming your way. I'm headed over. So Gary drove the 45 minutes to Miss Wanda's home in Terrell. When he arrived, he introduced himself, and Miss Wanda seemed confused. She told Gary she hadn't been in Garland. Like, what would she be in trouble for? Gary started to panic. But after a few more minutes of talking to her about their recent conversation, she started to remember and invited Gary into her home to see if she could ID Roxanne's killer or abductor.
Oh, boy.
At this point, Gary is worried that Miss Wanda may not be a credible witness, but he's determined to try.
Yeah.
Gary laid out a photo lineup of men, and without missing a beat, Miss Wanda ID'd David Penton as the man that ran into her the day Roxanne was abducted.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep. At this point, Gary is adamant he is going to bring David Penton to Texas and put this monster on death row.
Yeah.
So, on average, across the U.S., the average wait time on death row is 22 years. In Texas, it's 11. And historically, we've been known to put people to death within a year.
Yeah.
In California, it's 20 plus years, and in some cases, it's decades before inmates receive the death penalty.
Which is freaking insane.
Wild.
You have them on death row.
Is the line to the chair or the line to the table that long?
I don't know. I guess, some people have those certain, that's
they have all their appeals process.
And they have their appeal process, and some people don't like the death penalty and yada, yada, yada.
Yes.
But this is a child predator.
Take him out. Take him out.
Let's FedEx him to the Lord. Express.
Yes. Okay. So knowing this is why
should I say FedEx to the man downstairs, not the Lord?
Correct.
Yeah.
So knowing this is why Gary wanted Penton sentenced in Texas. He wanted that sucker to go down and to go down quick.
Yeah.
So we're in May 2003. 7 years have passed when Gary first stepped into the murder closet at Garland PD, and Gary was finally ready to talk to David Penton.
Oh,
and that is where I'm going to leave you for part 2.
Luckily, I get to hear it because we're going to double record today.
Because we're going to go ahead and record today.
But sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Got to wait till next week. That's insane.
Is that not wild?
It just keeps getting more and more like the twisty turns.
Yes.
That's insane.
Yep. Well, thank you for listening.
Yes.
Like, subscribe, and share on all of our socials.
Yes. Please
Thanks
rate
again
and review.
for all the comments and reviews.
Yes. Yes. Please keep them coming. And just FYI, if you're going to leave a comment on any of our stuff, victim blaming, victim shaming, I will delete it.
Oh, please don't.
Don't do that. Don't be one of those people. So just wanted to put that out there. And keep your roots deep.
And your head on a swivel.
Goodbye.